Now I'm going to animate my CSG cylinder to rotate around in a big circle. So at the start of my animation, I'm going to lock in this 0, 0, 0 rotation. Then I'm going to go to the end of my animation at 12 seconds. I'm going to rotate this cylinder around 360 degrees and then lock that in for the end of the animation. And we'll see, we get a nice big animated disc there. But when we play the game, we're going to have a pretty similar problem to what we had with our platforms. Just need to make it over to that cylinder. Going to need to wait for these platforms to line up with each other. And you'll see that the cylinder is rotating around in a big circle, but when my player stands on it, my player doesn't move at all. And this is for the same reason that our platforms didn't move us, and that is that my CSG shape is behaving as a static body, but unfortunately it's not behaving as an animatable body. So we can't use this lovely use collision option in our CSG shape. We need a normal mesh and a normal collision shape that we can stick in an animatable body. Fortunately, CSG shapes do make this pretty easy as well. Just like when we have a mesh, we can instantly generate a collision shape from it. When we've got a CSG shape, we can make our mesh and our collision shape by clicking on this CSG option and clicking Bake Mesh Instance. We get a mesh for free, and clicking Bake Collision Shape, and we get a collision shape as well. So now we just need to create a animatable body 3D and make sure that one's at the top level, and it's got our mesh inside it, and it's got our collision shape inside it, and we no longer need this cylinder at all. So I'll delete that cylinder, delete its animation tracks, and animate this animatable body instead, and this one is going to work properly for us. So at frame 0, we're going to rotate it 0, 0, 0. At frame 12, we're going to rotate it 360 degrees and lock that in. It should play exactly the same as before. We've got a big, nice rotating platform, but it's no longer a CSG shape. You can see it's actually carved out the bit in the middle properly. It's now an animatable body that we'll be able to stand on, and you'll see our player move as it does so. So let's give this a play. I'll get over to my rotating disc that is no longer a CSG shape. Wait for these platforms to sync up again. And now you can see it's still spinning, but when I jump on it, then it takes my player for a ride, and I can get all these coins, just like you'd expect of a rotating platform. So that's all working pretty nicely now. The final animation that I would like to add is to these 4 platforms here. I'd like them to be rotating around the central island. Now it could be extremely fiddly to get all 4 of these platforms and move them to a corner and then rotate them and then move them to the next corner and then just keep going all the way around and locking in all of the keyframes and then doing that 4 times. So fortunately there's a nice trick that we can use, and it's the same trick that we used with our door. I'm going to create a pivot point right in the very center of the level, and I can just spin that pivot point, and anything inside it, which will be all 4 of those platforms, can just move around that point. So I'm going to click on platforms, and I'm going to add just a basic node 3D, which I'm going to call pivot. Then I'm going to select these 4 platforms in my tree. Just hold down Control, I think it's 2, 3, 4, 5 for me. It's those 4 platforms, and then drag them into the new pivot point that I've created. And now, when I rotate this pivot point, I'll be able to move all 4 of those platforms at once, and it's going to be the only thing I really need to animate. So let's click on the animation player, go to my pivot point, and at 0, 0, 0, I'm going to lock in a rotation of 0, 0, 0. Then after 12 seconds, I'm going to lock in a rotation of 360 degrees. Lock that in. Let's watch those platforms go around. Now it looks like that's a bit too fast for me to jump on. So I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make this animation now take 24 seconds. I'm going to find my rotating pivot, and drag this last frame out to 24 seconds. That's when it's going to have rotated 360 degrees. All of this I'll just be able to copy paste, grab all of those other animations that I've got, Control C, go to 12 seconds, click on the first track and Control V to get a copy of all of my animations. All of those have copied across really nice, except for the rotating disc that I've made, because now it's staying at 0 for the first 12 seconds and then rotating to 360 at the end. So I want to delete the keyframe in the middle of my animatable body and just change this end one to 720 instead of 360. If you try to put 360 here and then go back to 0, what ends up happening is that it rotates around one way for the first half and then it rotates back around the other way for the second half. So we just want the whole thing to just keep rotating in the same direction for that one. Now all of these should be lining up nicely. I should see a nice rotation on my pivot and on my disc. Let's play the whole animation out. And you can see everything's moving around. The disc is spinning, the platforms are spinning as well. It's all looking pretty good. The only final small fix here is, of course, spinning these around isn't the best animation in the world. When I get to about 3 seconds, they're kind of clipping through the corners of the platform there. So what I can do is go back to 0, 0, 0, select all 4 of my platforms, and save their position, create 4 reset tracks for those, and then at that 3-second mark where I need them all to be further out, fortunately, because they're all children of that central pivot, I can just click on one at a time and just move them slightly away, and it's not some awkward numbers, it's all local relative to that pivot. So this is 8 Z units forwards of the pivot, and I'll just change it into 9, and it's a little bit further away. These ones on the side, they've got the same thing happening but in the X axis, so I'll change that one to 9, go to that platform, looks like that one's Z, do -9, and the final one I'll change to -9, lock that in. We'll be locked into that new position at 3 seconds. So if I play the first 3 seconds of this animation, you'll see them slowly move outwards from the middle, and then they stay outwards, but it's a pretty easy fix to get them to come back into the middle. We'll go to our 6-second mark. We'll grab all of these animations that we've got here for those 4 platforms, and copy, paste. We'll go to 12 seconds, there we go, and paste. And we'll go to 18 seconds and paste, so that that's happening all 4 times. They're just going in and out, and they don't really know that they're rotating around at all. It's the pivot doing the rotating. So these look like they're rotating quite well now in the editor, but something a bit odd still happens when I come to playing the actual game. If you look at what these platforms are doing, they're kind of not rotating the amount that I expect them to. It should be flat when it hits me here. And I spent quite a while trying to work out what was going on here. It turns out it's nothing to do with the interaction between the pivot and the platforms or anything, and it's actually because those platforms in the game are dragging along the bottom of the ground a little bit. In my scene, I've got my ground sort of carved out, and it doesn't happen in the editor, but when I'm playing the actual game, these platforms have got some physics applied to them, and my animation player doesn't care about that physics when it's looking in the editor, but the platforms certainly care about that physics when they're playing the game. Fortunately, the fix for this is pretty straightforward once you know that that's the problem. I can click on my animation player, and there's this option here called callback mode. This affects when the animation player happens. So by default, the animation player uses the process function. But if I change this callback mode to physics, then it uses the physics processor function instead. It just changes slightly when all of the animations actually happen, and it means that my platforms aren't going to drag along the ground anymore. The physics is going to be part of what the animation player does. So that fixes that little bug with the platforms not rotating quite the right amount because they were touching the ground. Now I should be able to play the game and everything should be working perfectly. So here's our final finished level 2. With some nice rotating platforms that are always facing the correct direction.